All right, it looks like we're live. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. I want to say a quick thank you to our sponsor, Swipe Pods, and then just a quick reminder that this replay will be available only for 24 hours. After that, in order to access it, you're going to need to get the premium pass. And also these webinars and presentations count for continuing ed credits. So if you have any questions about that, let us know. We'll be happy to answer any and all of your questions. Today's featured speaker is Crystal Parker. I'm going to hand it over to her right away, and then we'll be popping back at the end for questions. Enjoy today's speaker.
Am I on? Sorry, my connection lost. Darcy, am I on? Sorry, the connection lost.
No, that's okay. You're on. You're all set to go. No worries.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, everyone out there. My name is Crystal Parker, and I'm coming to you today to talk about self-care and burnout within the nursing community. My presentation today is entitled From Burnout to Bliss, in which we'll be talking about healing the nurse through self-care practices. So just a little introduction about me. Once again, Crystal Parker is my name. I'm an ER nurse for the last 10 years who recently became a board certified nurse practitioner. I completed my program 1 month last year before giving birth to my first child, who is now 1, my daughter, and I'm also expecting my second. So I'm a wife and owner of 2 businesses, one business in which I create self-care products specifically for nurses. I also self-care within the nursing community because we all need that reminder to put ourselves first through self-care. And my other business is an IV hydration business in which I do beauty and wellness, and we're a mobile med spa. I've also been newly elected the secretary for my nurses union at work. So needless to say, I'm very busy and I once suffered from burnout, which is why I have firsthand knowledge of what I'll be speaking about today. I'm only able to do all these things through the support and through self-care practices. My burnout started back in 2017, in which we had a very bad flu season, in which, it's nothing compared to the pandemic of today. But I'm able to get through it because I've already kind of been through that burnout. So I know how to handle it and maintain it. I was working crazy hours to help pay for my wedding and honeymoon in school. I was in school. I was barely sleeping. I was eating unhealthy, and I was basically just a mess. I hated going to work. I got anxiety before work. I started hating what I did. And I had major compassion fatigue. And all around, I just did not like the person that I was becoming. I took the oath to be a nurse, and I just didn't like where my head was at. But once I got closer to my wedding, I started enjoying, spa days, being treated from friends with brunches and lunches. And, I started working out to fit my wedding dress. I started eating healthier. I worked less as it approached, and I started to see the light. I took a month off during my wedding. I know we can't all do that, but I did take a month off for my wedding and honeymoon, and I was able to totally relax and detach from work. During that time, the light bulb clicked that I needed to invest more in my self-care, and I needed to set my life up in ways that I did not have to work so much, because I wanted to prevent ever going back to that place. So if any of you can relate, then this will be the webinar for you. I went back to work after that with a renewed mind. My compassion for my patients was back, and I began spreading the word to my coworkers about self-care and how important that it is. So today we will be talking about what is burnout, why nurses are at a higher risk for burnout, the effects of burnout on nurses and why it's important and needs to be addressed. We will also be discussing 5 ways to prevent burnout, where to start, because self-care is such a broad topic. So I want to give you guys some tips on how to start, and then we'll have question and answer at the end. So get your questions ready. and we'll do that at the end. So I just wanted to do a grounding exercise really quick. Some people call this woo-woo, all this meditation and grounding work, but it really works when you take intentional steps to reset your mind. So I just want to walk you guys, and we'll do it really quick. It'll be like a 60 to 90 second exercise. So if you can get comfortable wherever you're at, if you're working right now, and you can't really stop and do this, that's fine. But try to do it later maybe, or if you're off today, then just sit and get comfortable in your seat, preferably with your feet flat on the ground and your arms uncrossed, and just get comfortable. And I'm going to welcome you to close your eyes and just take a deep breath slowly in through your nose and out through your mouth. We're going to do that again, breathing slowly through your nose with your eyes closed and out through your mouth. Take one more breath in through your nose, and I want you to focus on your breathing and out through your mouth. Continue these breaths. Any thought that enters your mind, go ahead and acknowledge the thought and then push it out. Focusing back on your breathing, in through your nose and out through your mouth. And I want you to think about being at your favorite place right now. Favorite place in the world. It's pandemic, we can't get there, but just think about your favorite place as you take small, deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Do you feel the sun? I know it's snowing some places, so go to that place where you can feel the sun shining on your face as you take a deep breath in through your nose. Do you feel cold air? Are you in the mountains? Do you hear the waves or the birds chirping? Can you feel your surroundings? Maybe the wind is blowing on your face. Can you smell the air? Just sit for a few seconds as you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. In through your nose and out through your mouth. And when you're ready, notice yourself back in your seat, sitting where you're sitting, and congratulate yourself for doing something for yourself today and listening on how you can beat burnout and put yourself in self-care first, and open your eyes. Perfect. So this is an exercise you can do anytime. It doesn't have to be this long. I've done this many times in the supply room, in the med room while I'm getting meds when it's been a rough day. Just a few quick breaths to reset your mind and to take your focus off of the troubles of your day. So try it next time that you're feeling yourself getting extremely stressed out at work. So what is burnout? Herbert Freudenberg, a U.S. psychologist, was the first person to study what he called burnout or being burnt out. He studied this in a lot of different jobs, but he noticed that in medical, that burnout was worse. Burnout is described as when someone becomes exhausted by making excessive demands on their energy, strength, or resources in the workplace. Burnout is characterized by physical symptoms such as exhaustion, fatigue, frequent headaches, GI disorders, sleeplessness, and shortness of breath. Behavioral signs include frustration, anger, a suspicious attitude, excessive use of tranquilizers and barbiturates, including alcohol, cynicism, and signs of depression. And doesn't this nurse's picture on the right definitely explain what I was talking about when you have to go in the supply closet and all you can do is just shake your head, take a couple deep breaths, and go back out there and put on that brave face that all of us nurses have. So the Maslach burnout inventory was created by Christina Maslach, who developed this. MBI was what is shortened for, is a standard tool for research in the field of studying burnout. There are 20. So how to answer yes to. When you think about work, do you feel emotionally drained? Do you feel used up at the end of the day? Do you worry that your job is hardening you emotionally? This is what I kind of went through being an ER nurse. I felt it was hardening me. Do you feel like you're at the end of your rope? Have you become more callous towards people since taking this job? What happens to some of your patients? That's part of that compassion fatigue that we'll speak about later. Why are nurses at a higher risk for burnout? COVID is only exacerbating the problem that nurses already have when it comes to self-care and burnout. We are now more overworked and overstaffed than ever. Unfortunately, a lot of us are stuck in positions that we can't get out of and being forced to deal with whatever working conditions we are given. The World Health Organization deemed 2020 the year of the nurse, and I don't know if you guys have heard, but they've just extended it to 2021 because of all the heroic work that nurses have done in 2020. So everybody is recognizing nurses nowadays, and although we're getting the respect that we felt that maybe we didn't once have, it does not mean that the job has gotten any easier. It's only gotten worse. The culture, so nurses are at high risk for burnout because we're understaffed and overworked. Our overtime and our addiction to it. Nurses, we'll talk a little bit more about this later too, but nurses, we have a culture of overtime, and our addiction to it makes nurses constantly chasing money and thinking about harmful effects. Working in these understaffed and overworked positions are causing us. So we're chasing money versus thinking about what working all this overtime will do to us mentally. Skipping breaks. How many of us, myself included, have skipped breaks or held going to the bathroom so long that you almost nearly got a UTI? We work 12 hours, get one lunch. I know where I work, the culture is getting one lunch, a break. Yeah, right. Maybe 8 hours into your shift, you get one 30-minute lunch. And it's just not enough, That's what happens when I go to other units. I see that people are working 8 hours and they're getting 2 breaks and a lunch. And, I work in the ER, and I'll be lucky if I get that. But we have compassion fatigue, which contributes to burnout, the lack of self-care, lack of job control. We have a work-life imbalance, and we have work environments. A study by Emily Peters found that nurses were predisposed to compassion fatigue by repeated exposure of others' suffering, high stress environments, and continuous giving of self. The consequences of compassion fatigue negatively impacted the nurse, patient, organization, and healthcare system. And then we're not getting enough sleep, lack of time, being too busy caring for everyone else besides ourselves leads to burnout. This is important. So we educate our patients to take care of themselves, but we don't take care of ourselves. We educate our patients. We even scold our patients to eat healthy, to exercise, make sure you get 8 hours of sleep, and follow up with your primary care doctor. But how many of us are guilty for not practicing what we teach? Or get your blood drawn to check your numbers? How many hours of sleep do you get at night? When's the last time you worked out or meal prepped for healthy meals for the week? These are things we instruct our patients to do, so we don't do them ourselves. Burnout and why it's important and needs to be addressed. A study has shown that 30 to 50% of new nurses reported wanting to leave the department or nursing altogether. If that happens, I'm sure the numbers will be higher after COVID. We're not going to have any nurses left. Nurses are at higher rates of mental health problems and substance abuse. Suicide in nurses for both male and female is significantly higher than the suicide rate in the general male and female population. A study by Davison showed that nurses were significantly more likely to have reported mental health problems, a history of a treatment of mental illness, history of previous suicide attempts, leaving a suicide note, and physical health problems than the general population. Nurses dying by suicide is a phenomenon that is happening more than most of us are aware of. until recently, in which in San Diego, 3 nurses committed suicide at the same hospital that was unrelated. They did not know each other. And it was then that they decided, maybe we should start taking a look at the nurse suicide rates of nurses who are dying by suicide. Before this, they were doing a lot of studying and focusing on physicians and suicide, but dying by suicide is because of work satisfaction. They went to school all these years just to be in a career that they hate, and also that they're in a career that they hate with increasing debt from taking out student loans. That's what causes doctors a lot of the time suicide. But with nurses, it's different. It's because we have to go to work and endure all that we do at work, taking care of others, giving ourselves to others, being sad, having to put on that brave face and take care of someone else when you have your own problems going on at home. And then you have to go home and deal with taking care of people at home, dealing with your issues at home. And that causes nurses and anyone else really to give up. So we're going to fight that today, and that's why I like to spread the word about self-care. PTSD. I added this in here because the rates of PTSD, they say, are going to climb with what nurses are seeing and having to deal with in the time of COVID. PTSD is a growing concern for nurses internationally. Exposure to traumatic patient events, lack of organizational support, and poor coping skills increase nurses' risk. The COVID-19 pandemic could take a long-term emotional toll on many nurses. Nurses have been exposed to more deaths more frequently and higher numbers than ever before. I know at our hospital, we ordered so many body bags until we were out, and we've never seen death before, and it's very scary. Also, seeing patients suffer while being the middleman between the patient and the family who can't have visitors, being the middleman between a dying patient and a family giving the patient their last words are taking a toll. Nurses will be dealing with the effects of PTSD and this pandemic for years to come. And then, like I said several times, burnout leads to compassion fatigue. So we'll spend a little time talking about compassion fatigue. We took an oath as nurses to do no harm. We can't expect to not do harm to others while we continue to do harm to ourselves by not identifying and addressing our burnout. Compassion fatigue is a type of burnout that impacts the emotional connections nurses have with their patients, causing them to disengage. This leads to medication errors, unsympathetic attitudes towards your patients, patient abuse and neglect. It decreases productivity and increases turnover. And when you have compassion fatigue, you tend to miss important signs that your patient is declining because, you just don't care anymore. You kind of check out. So I feel like compassion fatigue is important in talking about burnout because we take care of patients and our compassion needs to be there. And if you notice, like myself, that you start experiencing signs of compassion fatigue, then you really need to do a check within yourself, get help, and take steps to turning that around because we are here to take care of patients and we need to be our best selves. But in order to be our best selves for other people, we have to be our best selves for ourselves. Nurses are the largest and most trusted healthcare profession. The pandemic, and like I said, being extended Nurse of the Year of the Nurse for 2021 has shown us that nurses are the most critical necessity in healthcare. Yet, once again, we're overweight, we're tired, depressed, and we oftentimes feel underappreciated. So now that we know why burnout is important and needs to be addressed, what can we do about it? Nurses, I want to let you know that we must save ourselves. We cannot wait for our employers to do so. We cannot wait for our Nurses Week gift to be what helps turn us around and make our attitudes better and make our burnout lessen and make our self-care increase. We have to take these steps ourselves. As you see down here, you have your battery. Think of your burnout and compassion fatigue as a battery. Are you empty? Are you halfway charged? Are you completely charged? And we want to get you to the picture on the right where you're completely charged up and living a life that you deserve, a life of bliss, right? So we talked about, we talked about, are you burnt out? Here's some more ways to, we talked about the Maslach burnout inventory, but here's some more questions to ask yourself, because I want you guys to be able to identify. That's the most important thing, to identify when you're suffering from burnout, because if you're able to identify when you're suffering from burnout, you'll be able to take the steps that I'll show you later to be able to combat the burnout. Are you, like we said, cynical or critical at work? Just, that nurse who comes into work and is just mad at the world. Do you drag yourself to work and have trouble getting started? Have you become irritable with or impatient with coworkers, customers, or clients? Do you lack energy to be consistently productive? Do you find it hard to concentrate when you're at work? Do you lack satisfaction from your achievements? Do you feel disillusioned about your job? Like it's not the job that you thought it was going to be? Are you using food, drugs, or alcohol to feel better or simply not feel? Have your sleep habits changed? Are you troubled by unexplained headaches, stomach or bowel problems, or other physical complaints? If you find yourself getting rashes, hives, panic attacks before work, anxiety, you're constantly getting sick and notice your immune system is weak, you could also be suffering from burnout. So we're going to talk about 5 tools and practices for burnout prevention. First is therapy. Next is getting help and outsourcing. Finding your compassion or your outlet. Changing jobs. And prioritizing and scheduling self-care. Most of those things lead back to self-care, so that's what we'll spend most of our time talking about at the end. Therapy. So therapy allows us to have someone outside of our circle to talk to about things that might be embarrassing. As nurses, it might be embarrassing to admit that we have a substance abuse problem or that we don't have it all together, right? Because we're nurses. It's the year of the nurse, and we have to admit that we don't have it all together. And that's okay, because the therapist is there not to judge you, but to listen, to offer help, and offer another way to think about life. I'll tell you a little bit about my therapy experience. It was last June. I was getting ready to go back to work from being on maternity leave. I was scared as ever. It was the middle of COVID when we were kind of just realizing this thing was serious. I was scared of catching COVID at work, bringing it back home to my baby. I remember I would cry thinking, I couldn't kiss her anymore after I went back to work. And it was just a very scary time. Then the death of George Floyd happened. I had emotions from that. It was just a trying time. But to back it up a few months before then, I wanted to practice what I preached as spreading the word of self-care. I always talked about therapy, but I didn't really have a therapist myself. So I thought, even though nothing is quote unquote wrong with me, I want to set out on the journey of finding myself a therapist. So I talked to someone and we ended up talking, and I was honest with her. I was like, I don't really feel like I have a problem. per se, but I definitely want to establish a relationship with the therapist. And we talked about things like the superwoman syndrome, which a lot of us, I'm sure, have it. Woman nurses is trying to do everything all the time and how that can affect your mental health. So I was like, okay, maybe it's good that I've established this relationship. Then fast forward to me going to work, all that stuff happening, all those emotions that I had. And I just called her one day and I was just bawling at one of our appointments. And she really said, in her calm, simple voice, just gave me some things and practices to do. And that helped me tremendously. She gave me some affirmations that I set by my window and I would say them. And it wasn't until later, and we'll kind of get into affirmations later, that when they started connecting, I was like, wow, this is why affirmations are so powerful. But establishing that relationship with the therapist was amazing, because when the time came that I did have something going on, I already had that relationship established, and speaking to her gives me a way of putting my thoughts that are all in my head. Because I know a lot of times, as women especially, we're all in our head and we have all these thoughts going around, and she's able to tell me it's okay to not do anything. You're a woman who values their self-worth on your productivity, and it doesn't have to be that way. If you don't want to be productive some days, that's okay. So having a therapist kind of gives you words to what you're thinking and lets you know that you're not alone and that other people suffer from the same thing. But I just want you guys to know that finding a therapist is like finding the right doctor. You have to shop around to find the right fit. There's doctors that we work with that we would never send our worst enemy to. And then there's doctors that we wish were in primary care so we can make them our our primary doctor. So it can be exhausting telling your story to different therapists, but I assure you, when you find the right fit, it's like magic and you'll be happy you did it. So resources like BetterHelp and Talkspace make therapy easy and accessible. I believe they have packages as low as like talking to someone, and these are trained therapists, certified and licensed. You can talk to for like $25 a session, and they're right on the phone through a Zoom call, and they're really amazing resources for getting started. I also want to tell you guys, if you haven't, look at the benefits that your job offers. I know that my job offers something called EAP, which is the Employee Assistance Program. What this program does is it gives you free counseling services. I want to say it's 3 to 5 sessions to start, but a little gem is that you can use these sessions for different things. So if you have a death in the family, that's one EAP. That's one set of counseling sessions you can get. If you're feeling depressed because of this pandemic and work, that's another set of therapy sessions you can get. So look and see what benefits your job offers, and definitely take advantage of that. You want to take advantage of everything that your job is offering to help you. Let's see, getting help and outsourcing. I once posted this on my Instagram, and so many people were like, oh my God, like I needed to hear this. Hire that housekeeper. Outsourcing tasks and household chores can be a lifesaver. Set your life up in a way that takes the stress off of you. If that's a meal prep company to make your meals for the days that you're working, finding a babysitter for date night, or for just having a day to yourself, whether that's doing these grocery shopping services online, laundry services, whatever you can do to make your life easier. I want you guys to look into that, because once you take that load off, once again, that superwoman syndrome, once you take that load off of you and feeling like you have to do everything all the time, it just makes life easier. So outsource those tasks and use that free time to do other things that you enjoy. So changing jobs or cutting back on overtime. I know that changing jobs is easier said than done, but the environment in which you work is causing stress and burnout. Don't be afraid to look for another department. That's the beauty about being a nurse. We don't have to be bound to one thing, and we have so many options. Now, I do know I I don't know if I said, but I'm here in California. There's lots of different hospitals, lots of different things going on. So I am aware that there are some people who live in small towns and maybe you're not able to do that. But that's what leads me to learning to budget versus being a slave for overtime. Being a slave for overtime in the long run contributes to burnout. So if you're able to set your life up to where you don't have to work as much, or maybe you can get a part-time job and go part-time at one job and have 2 part-time jobs to equal a whole job, whatever you have to do to lighten your load and get out of an unhealthy work environment, that's what you need to do. Nurses are built on the overtime mentality, right? We have the ability to make lots of money and make it fast. We live our lives and calculate the things that we want based on the shifts that we have to work. So if you're thinking, I want to take a 1-week vacation to Hawaii, so that's 5 shifts I have to work. Or I want a new purse, so that's 2 shifts I have to work. The kids' sports fee for the year is 3 shifts I have to work. So we kind of base our budget off the amount of shifts of overtime that we have to work. But this culture of overtime is contributing to our burnout. Instead, look at ways that, we can live our life by a budget so that we don't have to depend on that overtime. If we work any overtime, it should be to pay for things that make us happy or to relieve stress, outsourcing duties, not to pay for bills that we acquire, buying things that we don't need, that we think will make us happy, but in the long run contribute to our burnout. Vacationing is one of my things, so I will always work overtime to take vacations, but I'm not working overtime to rack up bills that I have to continuously work the same amount of overtime every month to keep up. That's what we don't want to do. Because like I said before, we all know that crabby nurse, the one who comes to work with a bad attitude. I hope that's none of you guys, but don't be that nurse. Many times those are people who are unhealthy or unhappy rather, and they don't have fun. But I know it's hard to think about fun when you're unhappy with everything around you. So that leads me into the next way to beat burnout, which is finding your outlet and your passion. Aside from talking about self-care, this is probably my next favorite self-care topic, or, under the umbrella, ways to prevent burnout to do that help me, because I stumbled upon being a nurse entrepreneur. I was in no way thinking about going in business. But when I started thinking about going into business, I was unaware about how many nurses were entrepreneurs. I started doing research and found a whole community of nurses who were like-minded, just like me. It was like the light bulb went off, and I was like, wow, there's other people doing this and it can be done. Finding my passion in business and something to look forward, gave me something to look forward to outside of work. Working my 3 shifts, before I would work my 3 shifts, study, do homework, come home, go to sleep, do it all over again. But finding business gave me a purpose to do something outside of work. So if you want to find a dance class, if you want to make pottery, if you do whatever is your passion and gives you an outlet to have fun and get your mind off of the stresses at work. And think about it as having fun. Don't be afraid to have fun. Don't be all in your head. Another thing that I didn't mention was the negative self-talk. And I'll talk about that through this finding your passion or outlet, because a lot of us let our negative self-talk prevent us from doing the things that we want to do in life. If you're thinking about, oh, I want to take a dance class, but they'll just laugh at me and I don't know how to dance. Don't think of it like that. Think of it as you're having fun. You're doing something for you. And who cares what other people are thinking, because you're there for you. So find those passions, and who knows, you might turn those passions into a business one day, or you might not. You might just do it for fun. But find something that gives you an outlet outside of work, outside of the kids, outside of the family, something that is just for you. Or if you want to take your partner, do a dance class. I keep bringing up dance, but if you guys want to do that together, do something that fills you up and makes you happy. So this leads me to my favorite topic, prioritizing and scheduling self-care. But first, we'll talk about what exactly is self-care. First, self-care looks different for everyone. My definition of self-care is that it's an individual practice that preserves and improves one's well-being and happiness that usually fits within 6 domains. The 6 domains of self-care. One domain is physical. Physical self-care is nutrition, exercise, lifestyle, health, scheduling doctor's appointments. I highlighted that because, like I said, it just amazes me how many nurses have not seen their doctors in years, who have not seen dentists, and we have dental coverage, or nurses who have not done anything to assess whether or not their body is working properly. And then once again, we tell our patients to do that, but we don't do it. And physical is getting proper sleep. Mental self-care is going to be your mindfulness practices, like we did at the start of this presentation, meditation and therapy, having fun, saying your affirmations, having alone time, even if that includes hiding in the closet from your kids. But mental self-care is anything that gives your mind a break. Just sitting, doing nothing in a quiet space, not thinking, letting your mind be free, is mental self-care. And that small step is very important. We have so much going on in our minds, but just to sit quietly and not have any thoughts for a few moments really does a lot. And like I said, the affirmations and also positive self-talk. So negative self-talk, like I said, is thinking negatively about things. You can't do that. You're not good enough. You're not worthy enough. What I like you guys to also practice is when you have these negative thoughts that run through your head, and these are practices with self-care. And like I talk about later, self-care is a practice. So I want you guys to practice these. When you have negative thoughts that come into your mind, for instance, if you say, I love to start a business, but I'm not smart enough to do that. Hello, first of all, you're a nurse. You are smart enough to do anything you set your mind to. But I want you to take that and I want you to flip it into an affirmation and write it down and say it 5 times every day. So if you say, I want to start a business, but I'm just not good enough. I want you to flip that and say, I will start a business and I will make more money in that business than I could ever make in nursing because I am good enough and I will show myself that I'm good enough. Write that down and say it to yourself 5 times a day, and then start making steps to starting that business that you want. Or anything else that you have negative self-talk about. I want you to turn it into positive self-talk and write it down, the positive, and say it 5 times a day. Emotional self-care is getting rid of unhealthy relationships. That is a huge deal. Nurses, we want to love, we want to care for. We need to learn how to let go of unhealthy relationships that keep us tied down, keep our stress high, and contribute to our burnout. Emotional self-care can be journaling. It could be stress management, self-reflection, which is, like I said, noticing the signs of burnout and the signs of compassion fatigue, and learning how to say no. I know another thing of saying no is hard for nurses. It's hard for me, but a little practice that I want to share with you guys is if it's easy to say, oh, just start saying no, but it's hard for a lot of people. So if you start by saying, if someone asks you to do something, you really don't want to do it, but you're so used to saying, okay, sure, I'll do it. Start saying, I'll let you know. I'll check with my husband, or I'll see my kid's schedule, or I'll see what my work schedule is and I'll let you know. Sit on that for a day or two and examine how you feel. If you really don't want to do it, you'll kind of build up the excuses in your head of why you don't want to do it. And it makes it easier to say no than to just being in front of the person and having to let them down and say no. So try that as a practice. Learn to say, I'll let you know. And then if you come back in a few hours or a few days and say no, then you'll kind of build up the reasons like, I don't want to do it. I don't feel like doing it. I don't have to do it. That's what you tell yourself. And you learn to say no that way. And once you start saying no, because it makes you feel better and it keeps you doing things that you want to do and not being bound to things you don't want to do, it will get easier to say no. Spiritual self-care is being aware that you have spirituality needs and that your beliefs and values are aligned. Self-care with money is budgeting, avoid overspending, retirement plans, and savings accounts. Self-care and work is taking breaks, feeling appreciated for the work you do, having opportunities to advance, and making sure that you're in an environment where you feel respected and supported by peers and management. So with these self-care domains, let me just go back. With these self-care domains, and I believe included today, you guys will get my wellness checklist. It has some of these domains in there, and you just go through and you check which areas that you're doing good in under these 6 domains. And then the areas that you're not doing good in, that's where you start. That's where you start to make a practice and a plan, because we should have different self-care, these 6 different domains of self-care aligned. And for some, you might have it all together emotionally, but maybe physically you need to work on nutrition, making those doctor's appointments. So start there. And you might have your money together, but spiritually you're lacking. So the checklist just kind of gives you a guide of where to start and the areas that you're lacking the most so that you can start there. So why is self-care a necessity? Putting self-care on the back burner, like I said, can lead to stress, depression, and ultimately, as we talked about, mental health and mental illnesses that get so bad that it can lead to death. We can't pour from an empty cup. If we fill ourselves up with care and love, we will be better people to love and care for our patients, family, and friends. Why is self-care a necessity? Because we deserve it. Nurses, we spend so much time taking care of everybody else that we deserve to be happy and to live happy lives. No more of this not being completely happy. You are a nurse. They made 2 whole years for you, year of the nurse. So why do you not deserve to be happy? You deserve to get out of that funk and stop making excuses for why you're in that funk. And it's up to you to get yourself out of it through self-care practices and through self-love. And again, we must practice what we preach. So how do we prioritize self-care? It's easy to talk about self-care until we're blue in the face, but we need a plan and we need to know how to prioritize and schedule self-care. Self-care is a practice, as I mentioned earlier, which means we have to practice it like anything else. It doesn't come easy for everyone. Some people have been so stuck in their rut and in their negative self-talk that self-care and caring for themselves and doing things different ways doesn't come easy. That's where a therapist comes in to help you because they can give you more tools than this webinar can. And there's someone to walk with you, making sure you're taking those necessary steps that you need. I always say, if you wait for the day to make time for self-care, it will never happen. So you have to schedule it. How many times have we said we're going to do this or that for ourselves? Tonight, you're going to take that bubble bath, and it never happens because you haven't scheduled it, which is why I like to set a timer. Setting timers has helped me dramatically, not only with my self-care, but also reminding myself, especially at work, to drink water, reminding myself to say my affirmations, setting a timer. Our lives are very, very busy, not just as nurses, but as, wives, mothers, daughters, taking care of other family members. It's busy. So we kind of that's what timers are for. That's what alarms are for. So use them. I always say start slow with your self-care, 15 minutes 2 times per week. Of course, I would love to tell you to take an hour and go to the spa every week, but that's just not going to happen. So start slow, 15 minutes 2 times per week. My personal daily self-care practice is my skincare routine, in which I take 15 minutes a day during the morning and night. It's just for me. I give my daughter to my husband. I do my face care routine in the morning. That's when I do my affirmations. I have them on sticky notes, little heart sticky notes on my mirror. And I wash my face, do my whole 6-7 step procedure of my face care routine while I say my affirmations. That takes about 15 minutes in the morning and in the night. If I don't get it done in the morning, then I might get it done in the night, but sometime during the day, I'm getting that done. And when you intentionally think of something as self-care, then that makes it self-care for you. If sitting in my car for 10 minutes before I go into the craziness of the house is time for myself as long as I intentionally tell myself, I'm sitting here, I'm going to take some deep breaths, and I'm going to prepare myself for what's going on in the house. Then that's self-care. When you start to notice that you're slowly doing things for yourself, I say this at the end, once you start to make time, making yourself a priority, it becomes addicting, and you'll find the time that you never knew that you had to make better decisions. So start slow, be intentional about your self-care, and make self-care a non-negotiable. There's no, I will see, maybe if I have time to do self-care. No, it's a non-negotiable. Negotiable. Let's see. So self-care practice example. Here's more examples. A 15-minute morning reflection. A gratitude journal. I also have attached for you guys, or they'll be sending you guys my ebook, which talks about kind of goes more in depth about my self-care journey, and then more tips about self-care and how to self-care practices that you can take on to help with your self-care burnout. But one of the things that I first started to do that I heard from Oprah is a gratitude journal in which you write down 5 things a day that you're grateful for. Now, I want you to dig deep. I remember Oprah saying some days you're so worn out that the only thing you could be grateful for is the air in your lungs. And that's true. Some days it's going to be like that. But I want you guys to really dig deep and find things that you are grateful for in your daily lives. Once you start giving yourself gratitude for the things that are going good in your life, you start to stop focusing on the negative. So having that attitude of gratitude, writing down, I'm happy that I was smart enough to go to school and be a nurse, an opportunity that a lot of people don't have. That's having gratitude. You know, being happy that you have a place to work. When a lot of people excuse me, guys. My computer was dying. When a lot of people right now don't have jobs. Along with your gratitude journal, I want you to also, on the other side, write a brag journal. What a brag journal is I want you to write also 5 things during the day that you can brag on yourself a little bit about. I started the IV on first try. I was able to get my patient off the ventilator. I was able to put my child to sleep without them crying for 30 minutes. Write those things that you can brag on yourself about, so when you're feeling low, you can go back and look at things that you're grateful for and things that you accomplishments that you made that you can brag about. And I assure you, once you start looking at things that you can be grateful for, especially around the hospital, I used to look at my patients and say, wow, I could be here on a 5150, right? I mean, what's stopping you from what's the difference between you and the next person? It's just life choices that you made, or how you were raised. But you could be laying in that hospital bed. But I'm grateful that I'm here to take care of these patients. I'm grateful that I'm here to be able to be a mediator between them and the doctor to let them know what's going on. Once you start looking and having an attitude of gratitude, your mentality will start to change about a lot of things. But also taking morning walks, learning to say no without explanation behind it, as I talked about, doing your affirmations, deep breathing exercises, starting a budget, and an exercise routine. I am not someone who loves exercising. It's not, when we look at the 6 domains, favorites, but physical exercise is not something that I necessarily love, but I do have a trainer and it does hold me accountable. But once you start exercising and getting into that routine, you start to feel the high that people who love exercising feel. And there's nothing like exercising in the mornings and starting off your day like that. So if you've been thinking about starting to exercise, get yourself a trainer. It's okay. I had to learn that it's okay to have to be accountable to someone. I work best when I'm accountable for someone. That's why I did good in school, because I'm accountable to my teachers. I do good with a trainer because I'm accountable to them. I do my mental health exercises because I'm accountable to my therapist. So if you're a person who needs accountability, it's okay. If you need a financial planner to help you budget, do that. But just do anything to make your life easier, to take the stress away, and to help decrease your burnout, because we need you here in the nursing community. Your patients need you. And if you think about how your patients need you, then you'll start to take the steps to bettering yourself so that you can be a better person all around for your patients and your family. So remember that you deserve self-care. Self-care is not selfish, because you cannot be the best to those around you until you're the best to yourself. Self-care helps combat burnout and compassion fatigue. You owe it to yourself, your patients, your friends and family to be the best who you can be, and that is achieved through self-care and self-love. And that the effects of not taking time for yourself can lead to stress, burnout, depression, and mental illnesses. The hardest part is getting started. You have to make a promise to yourself, and I hope that you start that promise today, that you will start making yourself a priority, and that self-care is no longer a non-negotiable. Here's some resources for you. The UC San Diego HERE program, they are one of the organizations that started looking into suicide by nurses. And I don't know, I don't think I touched on it quite a bit, but the studies do show that nurses, both male and female, within the nursing community have higher rates of death by suicide than looking at the general population alone. So, this is not just stuff we're just, saying. It's actually backed up by data that shows that death by suicide within the nursing community is higher than any other community. And that's just sad, because nurses are the people who make the medical systems work. We're very critical and vital to taking care of other people. And how sad is that our population is dying at a faster rate by suicide than everyone else, while we're the ones taking care of everyone else. So that's why I'm here to prevent that. BetterHelp, as I talked about before, was a company in Talkspace where you can do therapy online that's quick, easy, and accessible. And then also the suicide prevention line. If anyone needs to take that number down and call, please get yourself some help. This is my website at My Self-Care RX, in which I have products and resources for nurses with self-care, and then also the psych.com, mental health well-being, that has different meditation resources to kind of reset your mind and help you in getting mentally healthy. So now we'll do questions. Let me see. Here's my resources. If anyone has questions, let me try to go back to the screen. There we go. Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay, so Fern on, I believe she is on YouTube, says, I had never heard nurses had a higher risk for suicide than the general public. And yes, it's absolutely true. I know I had started reading the study a few years ago when I actually, we had a little meeting with Katie, and a nurse, I believe her name is Chris, and she does a podcast. Her daughter died death by suicide, and she started telling us about how nurses had a higher suicide rate, and I started researching it, and it's true. And like I said, that study in San Diego, the nurses who 3 nurses at the same hospital ended up passing away, dying by suicide. And that it was then that they actually looked into it and saw that we need to take care of ourselves. Someone else says, we care so much about our patients, but when you're asking your management for a day off for your own health reasons, they don't Give a damn to your own personal needs. That is so true. They care more about the unit and the business must go on. Sorry, but that's how I feel recently. And it's very true. That's why I said we cannot wait for staffing. We cannot wait for management, and we cannot wait for anybody else to save us. We have to save ourselves. She said, the only reason why I stay in my profession is the patients. And that's true. And that's why a lot of us stay in nursing, because we know that our patients need us. So the lack of empathy from RNs are burnout, not human resources. And that is absolutely true. And it's really sad that healthcare is a business. And unfortunately, we are at risk because we're the most vital, important parts, but yet they won't give us a day off, right? Excellent podcast. And then someone else says, fill your left tank first to enable care for others. And that's so true. So I had a great time speaking with you guys today. I hope you learned a lot. You will get the wellness checklist and also the ebook. Visit my website. Once again, it is myselfcarerx.com. And that will give you more resources. And also I have an Instagram. If anyone's on Instagram, it's selfcarerx_. So I hope you guys learned a lot. I hope you can take some of these practices and utilize them and get serious about your self-care, because like the person who posted said, we cannot wait for management to save us. They won't even give us a day off. So sometimes we just have to use our sick time and take the time off and look into finding places that care about us. And I know that's easier said than done, but just start to make a plan and work the plan and put yourself at the forefront. Put yourself first. So that is it.
Thank you so much, Crystal. You shared so much valuable information with us. I do think that it is so important that we have self-care. And I think you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, the superwoman syndrome. I think, not that it doesn't happen to men can be superwomen too, right? But, as women, taking care of, as a nurse and taking care of family and community and all of that has a tendency to really burn you out quickly. So you shared so much amazing information. Thank you so much. I also want to say one last thank you to today's sponsor, Swipe Pods. And then another quick reminder that this replay will only be up for about 24 hours and then it's going to come down. The only way to access it after that is going to be to upgrade to a Premier Pass, or you'll have access to the presentation, to any and all of the handouts that our speakers mention in their presentations. And then they all qualify for continuing ed credits as well. So definitely check that out. We'd also love to hear your own self-care tips. So feel free to share those in the comments and we will see you next week. Thank you so much.